name is Allison Field, and I want to welcome you to our YouTube channel, Create Your Blank, where we share stories of fascinating people who have created their blank. We share how they got started, what inspired them, and their journey of creating where they are today. Today, we have Bonny Leibowitz in the studio and super excited to share her story with you. Welcome, Bonny.
Thank you, Allison. I appreciate being here.
So excited to be with you. So let's just dive in. And I want to share how we met. So we have known each other like 20 years, I believe. At least. And it was when I was executive director for Allie's House, the nonprofit organization that worked with teen mothers. And you were part of a women's group. And tell us about that event. Do you remember the event?
Is that the exhibition you're talking about that was curated, the I Am Woman? Yeah, I remember just like working on pieces and did a piece for the event along with many other women. It was like, I believe, a fundraiser and just met some wonderful people. It was a great night. And yeah, there was a huge crowd of us. So it was super fun.
There was.
It was at Rising Gallery.
It was at Rising Gallery.
Yeah, they're super people. They don't have the gallery any longer, but they were terrific.
Yeah. It was really good. It's really good. And I have followed your work over the years and am so intrigued by you and your work and what you do out in the world. And I find it just fascinating. So I want to point out this beautiful piece of art behind me.
Yes. Thank you.
That you did. And it was a commission that we made. The name of it is Abundance. So can you talk a little bit about how you created it and what you created it with and a little bit about the background?
Yeah, sure. If you don't mind, I can share even this little piece too.
Yeah.
Kind of show some little bits and parts close up.
Oh, good.
So in the last several years, I've been working more 3D. Initially, when we met, I was doing just more painting on canvas and boards. My work has evolved over the years in different ways. And in that particular piece, well, I have many different items. I have moss, I have foam, I have natural elements like branches, I have metal pieces that are salvage pieces. And so because I use them in my work and we were talking, we discussed this kind of movement and having this kind of energy to the work. And when I created that piece, I used all those types of items. It's not a very heavy piece, but they're larger pieces, larger than someone might think just looking back there. Some of the largest one may be like 3 foot or 3.5 foot, 2 foot. And so, we had to still pack them in a pretty big box to get it up to you. But and I also use a lot of photography in my works. This is like printed photography of land and branches. It's hard to see.
Oh, that's cool.
Screen, but this has like a little metal tube and some branches down here and little electric box. And so it's a combination of different materials that are like industrial and natural. And so a lot of my work is about that these days.
Nice. So you use recycled materials and non-recycled materials and natural materials.
That's right.
It's just lovely. And yeah, these pieces are not heavy. They're very light. Use the foam, right?
That's right. And so part of it is a spray film. And yeah, they're large. So it was, again, in a large box, but the box was fairly lightweight. So it's pretty funny.
Yeah.
I had to pack the foam pieces in foam.
Yeah. And what I love about it too is you incorporated feathers from birds and hawks, birds of prey that I had collected over the years, specifically many in Colorado. And so you incorporate
because you're, bringing the history, something personal into the work that's yours. Also, the title Abundance, and that's so much about what your work is about. This energy that, when I see you and talk to you, I feel all this exciting energy. And, that's what I wanted to bring to the piece. So, I just felt like that was you.
I love it so much, and I get so many compliments on it. Yeah. So how did you get started doing art? I mean, did you start at what age did you start and how did it start?
Well, I think like a lot of people's stories, probably, I just happened to be good at making art when I was a little kid. And,
Uh-huh.
you get praised for the thing that you do good at, and you want more praise, and you do more and more. And, so I think since I was a kid, I always felt a connection to making art. As I was a teenager in high school, I really focused on making art. I turned all of my school classes into art projects and then went off to school to learn more about art. So, it's always been a big part of my life. And, I think it was just ingrained, I mean, I have a son and his interests are quite different. I think we're just born with, some innate, tendencies
Yeah.
toward different things that we love to do. And, you could just see that in the nature of a person as they're growing up. One person might be drawn to music, another to sports, and it's
Yes.
why? You don't know why, but it could be just some propensity that we have that's how we best express ourselves. So,
Yes, yes. And I love that because it is different for everybody. Everybody is trying to create their blank in the
right,
space, right?
right.
And trying to figure out what it is that they're good at. And as I like to say, there are four factors in choosing what you want to do. And one is personality, one is interests, one is values, and one is skills. And I think when you integrate all four of those into a career, that's where the juicy stuff comes.
That's right. Those are four really strong points. I agree. And, I think you can express yourself as an artist in any form. It doesn't have to be art. I mean, you are creating your life. So that's a piece of art. And so, just whatever you take on is your particular way of expressing that. It's our projections that we put onto everything we do. Some might have to do with our history or things that we learned that we think are
Mhm.
right or wrong or good or bad or things that we push against. And so, being an artist can take so many forms.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And it's true. Everybody is in a stage, some way of some form of creating that blank, creating what it is they're evolving into or moving into, right?
And I think, if somebody's looking for, how do I find that? It might be different at different stages in your life for some people. For me, it's been consistently, making work, but, taking a deeper dive into that over the years. But for some people, maybe they move to different things in their lives. Like maybe they've been, raising kids or they've been in one career and now they're ready to shift, but they don't know what. And so allowing yourself to play in several different areas is really key. I mean, as an artist, and teacher, educator, I find that, once, I don't know, maybe even as a kid, there's a pressure not to play, to act as if you know what you're doing and be all
Yeah.
serious and you're going to make this great thing,
Yeah.
but instead of making the great thing, just having fun. And it's not always fun. It's just discovery. It's not always like, oh, I had so much fun and you're laughing through the whole thing. You're not. It's a struggle. It's figuring things out. To me, the moments are the whole thing.
Yeah.
If I do that, this happens. But if you never experiment, you never find that, oh, that looks interesting.
Right.
You're always really busy with how can I make it like something. So, it's not a job, it's a discovery.
I like that. I like that. It is a discovery. And, I think we need to give ourselves permission to play more and discover more and get curious more. And, we have, I grew up in a family where you have to get a business degree, to be valid. It has to be a business degree or something like that.
Right.
And there's so many options
So many.
that we don't even know about or consider because it's not part of the thing
Yeah. Yeah.
that's prescribed for us.
Yeah. I miss that lesson when I was growing up. Nobody said I had to get a business degree. I probably should have.
Oh, good.
But, yeah, there's a lot of pressure to fit in. And we all look at people and we admire them for individuality. but
Yeah.
we're afraid to be individuals sometimes. And so,
Yes.
you're in a group and you're doing something a little different than other people that feels uncomfortable. And, you have to be willing to be like, okay, not everyone's going to understand me. And I don't even understand me. I'm just exploring and seeing what's going to happen,
Yeah.
uncomfortable or not. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. That's cool. So in your world right now, who you teach? Tell me what you do and who you do it with.
Okay, so I have two teaching studios that I own and run, and that has taken different shape over the years. Before I had my studios, selling and showing my artwork and doing that, and I was a mom, and I am a mom. But I, I was divorced when my son was about 5 and looking for, and the economy changed so much. Had been selling my work a whole bunch, and then there was some sort of crash way back in the day. And so it was like, how am I going to make my income? And so selling my work was just different. Things changed. And so I had never really taught before, and I started working for another art studio teaching. First, they put me with little kids, and I was like, I hate my life. I cannot do this. I was like, this is not for me. I was putting all the kids in timeout and working. And then they were just in another pile over here altogether. I was like, I can't teach kids. And so I knew my limit very quickly. That can do that are very special.
Yeah.
And then I moved to teaching adults, and I found out I was pretty good at it and I liked it and I found it rewarding. And I find, doing that, I learn and my students learn and found many different approaches that are helpful to people and myself. And so I opened up a studio where I started teaching. I first started like teaching. A friend of mine said, why don't you just teach out of your apartment? And I did that and people would come. It was crazy.
That's great.
So I'm thankful to her for suggesting that, a friend of mine back, who was also collecting my work. And so all this time I was still making my own work and getting it out there as much as I could. I didn't, this was pre-internet. So,
Yeah.
it was showing at friends' homes. I mean, but for a long time before that, I was showing at galleries, like I said, but there was this crash. I was showing in California and Santa Fe and in Dallas. And then, so anyway, so I started this teaching and then I opened a studio. And little by little, I connected with more and more people. And now I'm in this newer studio since the first one, like 25 years. I can't believe it. Yeah. So my classes have grown, of course, and then also I do one-on-ones with people, so someone can do that via Zoom or come in person, but now it's broadened so much from just my painting classes to 3D to encaustic to working with like these foam and materials and metal materials, plaster and, acrylic, oils, whatever a person's working with or would like to learn about. I do mixed media, collage, a little bit of everything. So all those things are on my site. I have two websites, my own personal work and then my teaching website. And then over the years prior to COVID, when I opened up the Encaustic Center, which was 6 years after the Bonny studio, it was like the space became available to me next door. And I was like, well, I have to have that, It's like as artists, we just grow all over the place. We need more and more space.
Yeah.
So I didn't know what I was going to do with it, but I had just recently started doing encaustic painting, which is painting with wax. And I didn't know how big a world it was. And I opened up the space next door and called it the Encaustic Center. It was funny because I was talking to my landlord and I was telling him, I kept telling him I wanted that space and there were different people in there at different times. And I said, well, whenever becomes available again, I want it. And I was trying to think of what I wanted to do with this space. And I hadn't been thinking about being caustic for that space because it just was new, something new I was doing. But we were just having a conversation. And I promise you, this actually happened. As I hung up the phone with him, the words the Encaustic Center just showed up in my brain. They just showed up.
I love it. I love it. And you followed it.
And I followed it.
You manifested it.
It just came out and it was perfect timing because people were just learning about encaustic. It was brand new. It was weird. It was different. Nobody heard of it. And I mean, some people did, but like in Dallas, I mean, it was just like, what is this stuff? Is my painting gonna melt off the wall? And so, there were lots of teaching opportunities. I was bringing in people from all over the country for workshops for many years. That was my business, and there's just so many iterations to learn. And now I teach it myself to people, but now it's just become part of the zeitgeist is, I'm painting, it just happens to be with encaustic, and it's, much more, it's like saying, oh, I'm painting with oil paint practically.
Right.
People used to think, oh, I have to find a gallery that shows encaustic. And it's like, no, it's just a gallery,
Right. Right.
So anyway, then when COVID happened, that all those workshops by independent artists that, I was bringing in went away because we couldn't bring people in person any longer.
Right. Right.
So anyway, the whole trajectory changed, and that just everybody kind of sort of went their own way and developed their own programming. And so I developed my own. And so now I just do pretty much most all the teaching myself. I bring in somebody like a Dallas teacher on occasion, like for cold wax or something like that. But anyway, so basically I also enjoy like making these exhibitions with artists that do one-on-ones with me. And so I have a couple of venues in Dallas that I'll show their work the end of the year. And so, I build these programs and then I have my ongoing classes as well.
That's so awesome. That's so amazing how that's evolved.
It really did.
Right.
Yeah. When
Over
you're
the years.
for yourself, as you know, you just have to keep creating your own, like, what would be next? What would be exciting to do? You're everything. You're ordering supplies, you're making the program, you're doing the online work, you're doing,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's all encompassing. So, what do you think is the biggest challenge for you as an artist today in today's world?
well, I think my biggest challenge is time because I'm very busy with classes and, making ends meet, making workshops, teaching, but also I want to make my own work. That's why I'm doing this. I mean, it's one of the main reasons is to, support myself so I can make my own artwork and have exhibitions. I've had some nice significant exhibitions and I have two bigger ones coming up. This year, I have a solo at Oak Cliff Cultural Center in Dallas, and next year at Women in Their Work in Austin, Texas. And so I'm preparing for those. And, there's a lot of work to be done. And that work means, having the time. And having the time means having the money to make the time.
Right.
It's like, yeah, you want to teach so that you could have this income, but how do you balance that with the, taking time to, it's like for me, it's not like I got 2 hours here, I got 1 hour there. Like that's fine and that's helpful, but I need blocks of days too
Yeah. Yeah.
and weeks. So for me, that's probably my biggest challenge is
Yeah.
blocking off the time for myself to get work done.
Yeah. And that's so important too. I mean, in any field that we are in, it's very important to self care is so important, too. Not just you creating your art, but self care for yourself, so you've got to build in time for that. And then for you
Right.
to be able to create your
Yeah,
art
yeah,
that you
we
love.
we chop away at everything to, sacrifice to get the one thing you really want, and then you let the other things go. It's
Yeah.
not good.
Yeah. 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 So it's a dance, I'm sure.
Yeah, there's no such thing as real balance. Like, people say, well, could you just, block off Fridays? Well, somebody wants to, do a one-on-one on a Friday. I'm
Yeah.
not going to say no.
Right.
You know,
Exactly.
that fits your schedule and my schedule. Let's do it. So
Yeah. Yeah.
unfortunately, the studio is what gets to be the flexible time,
Yeah.
but that's the way it is.
Yeah. Yeah. We just have to stay flexible and do what works for us, right?
That's right.
So, what would you recommend to young artists who are maybe watching this and saying, wow, she did it? Like she's doing the thing, she's doing her art. Because I think for so many people who are artists, either artists, musicians, or writers, they're told by their parents, you can't make a living doing that. You've got to do this stupid business degree thing. But what would you recommend to young people who may be watching or other people who are watching that want to do what you're doing? What would you recommend?
Well, I would just say there's really not one formula. There's so many formulas, and it's hard to say because there's so many ways to be an artist. There's artists that, show in galleries. There's artists like myself that show more in nonprofit spaces or university, museum kinds of spaces. I recently got a grant to do an exhibition, yeah, as part of an exhibition. So there's ways to pursue your career that you don't even know are available to you when you're young. And I wouldn't have known the things that I do because if somebody's selling, it's all according to like, did you go to school? Did you, what school? Like, you're going to have different types of connections with people because of where you put yourself. So that might be a consideration. And then, do you want to teach? Do you not want to teach? If you're not going to teach, there's a million other ways to be an artist. And it could be opening a studio yourself. It could be selling your work. It could be, something in administrate or something totally different. So you could leave it and get in the studio.
Yes.
So, I don't know that I have advice except to follow what your work seems to want to be doing, like really taking a look at, and you don't even know when you're young yet,
Right.
because you don't know where it's going to go. Like right now I'm doing a lot of work with these industrial and natural objects. I mean, I couldn't have known that when I was young that I was going to do that.
Right.
And not because I'm so into nature as much as I'm just noticing the connection between how we've affected nature by all of the industry or all the many things we do. And it's just, I'm interested in these hybrids and projections and how we see things. And so I use that as a platform to create these installations. The best thing to do is make your work and try to connect with people who are making work like you or that you feel like could help you that are a little bit further along. Get in a community of people that enriches you. They're going to have ideas for you and you're going to be able to reach out and they're going to be able to see your work and you individually. So I think those are good ways to connect.
Yeah. And I love that because as an energy coach, I think it's fascinating how you energetically, like it evolved energetically for you, moving from, into 3D from, what do you call it? Flat based.
Yeah. Like painting,
Just regular paintings into 3D sculptures. Right. And so your interest was part of that movement and growth, and the energy of whatever was going on in your life at the time contributed to sort of the modality that you were choosing, right?
Yeah. You got to go with your curiosity. Like you
Yes.
mentioned the word curiosity.
Yeah.
That's, don't discount where your questions lie.
That's right. And I think that energetically we meet the people we're supposed to meet.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
That can open the doors or make connections and can provide us with an entry into something new that we want to do. And you don't know that when you're young. You don't realize all the connections until, you're like our age. And then you're like, isn't that fascinating how that happened? Right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Bonnie, for joining me today. I loved visiting with you and having you on the show and learning all about your journey. And if people want to connect with you, how do they do that?
Well, they can find my own website on bonnyleibowitz.com.
Okay.
That's BONNY. Leibowitz, Leibowitz. And then also my Instagram, same name. And those are two good ways to find me. And then my I can lead anybody to my teaching information from there.
Okay. All right. We'll put that in the show notes as well for anybody who's interested. But that's a wrap for today. And if you enjoy this segment, feel free to add comments as we'd love to hear them. And if you'd like to receive future notifications of episodes, please hit that subscribe button. And thank you so much for tuning in. And we hope you have a beautiful day.